Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. I've had a week off. Feels a bit weird. Kind of feels a little bit like an international break. I haven't had a week off. I've been working away as normal, which I know is probably a disappointment to many of you because things seem to happen when I'm off. But yeah, it's been a bit of a weird one. We've still had various things happen. We've had players heading off on loan, rejected bids for Spurs players. We've had interest in a certain talented young Norwegian attacker, which we'll talk about all of the above. And I'll try and fit in a little bit of a Q&A at the end as well. And yeah, a couple of big earning players heading out the door. One obviously was a while about Eric Dyer, but obviously even Perisic. I said obviously within the first minute. My goodness. That's one of those words I'm trying to eradicate from my vocabulary. You know, you always make out that you don't listen to what people say or comments, and then one person points something out and it seeps into your brain. I guess that's how they get there. Not to say it was a nasty comment, it was just pointing out you say that a lot, which I do. I almost said it again just to make the point. So let's start off straight away with probably the newest thing that's happened today. Emerson Royal, a bid rejected from Spurs. By Spurs from Saudi team Al Nassr, which is the team I think Ronaldo plays for, Cristiano Ronaldo. Emerson, from what I understand, I should point out this was broken first by Tom Barkley from The Sun. I've gone through my normal channels, every kind of possible end of this I can, and got it all confirmed as well. That's not to say that Tom had not done the same, but obviously just like, I'm not parroting what someone else is saying. Talking about Troy Parrott a little bit later as well, actually. But yeah, from what I understand, Emerson very happy to be at Spurs. I think you can see that he loves life at Spurs. He's very settled, good people around him. Has become a dad recently. All very kind of in a happy place in his life. He's been a tremendous kind of servant to Spurs this season, especially. Not that he hasn't before, but this time, he's been filling in positions that is just not natural to him. He's been playing on the left, playing through the middle as a central defender. And, there's a lot of affection and kind of, I was going to say gratitude. Gratitude is a bit weird when someone works for you, but appreciation, I think, for what Emerson has done this season for Spurs and really helped them out. So we're not entirely sure on the exact number. It seems to be kind of maybe around the 20 million mark that's been rejected. But I don't want to say that for definite before any kind of aggregators chuck that out there. We're not entirely sure. There's a few of us that have kind of been trying to chase this down. Well, we know that the bid has been rejected. It certainly appears that it was less than 25 million euros, but we're not sure entirely exactly how much less. But I think the consensus seems to be around 20 million, but that's the one part I haven't had double confirmed, so I'm not putting that out there as exact things. But certainly what we know is that Spurs have had a bid, have rejected a bid, and I've seen the reaction on social media. It's a difficult one, isn't it? It's personally, and as someone in the past has been critical of some aspects of Emerson's play, but obviously this season has praised a lot of what he's done. I probably wouldn't let him go. I just think it's too iffy a time to do that, really. I think you've got no backup to Pedro Porro. Then, you could try to bring someone else in, but it's a bit of a gamble. You don't know whether they're going to settle on playing that role as well. And I just think in the summer, if that interest is still there and he wants to go, and from what it sounds like, because of the change to their what do you call it? It's registration kind of rules for foreign players. The Saudi Pro League sounds like they're going to have quite a big kind of summer. Not going for the older players, maybe going for the more a kind of mid-range, not middle-age, that would be rubbish. The players in their mid-20s, I guess, and younger players. I suppose Emerson falls into that. Was he 24, 25 now? But certainly this January, I think you'd be a bit mad to let him go, because I think they've been very fortunate Pedro Porro has been able to play so many minutes. That could change in an instant. This is Spurs. I think obviously it has to get to a point where if the money becomes a silly bid and Emerson does want to go, then yeah, that changes things. But at the moment, it doesn't appear that it's kind of in that sort of level of reaching that sort of thing. So yes. That's kind of it around Emerson. There's not too much more around him. Like I said, there's no indication that he's desperate to leave the club. Seems to be some suggestions the Saudi team are going to come back with another bid. Just maybe one to keep an eye on, see how it goes. In terms of incomings, you've probably saw a few of us reported it in the week. That Spurs have held talks with Club Brugge about a potential transfer and loan back for Antonio Nusa. If you're not aware who he is, he's a very talented 18-year-old attacker, Norwegian. I think he made his debut for was it Stadback? I'm trying to look. I've got my notes. Yes, Stabæk. So not Stade. Don't know where I got that from. Stabæk. Oh, I guessed I did this on the podcast and I made a complete mess of it and he got it right. Stabæk. Just a waste of my time, isn't it? It's going to be wrong every single one of those. Please, Norwegian people, tell me exactly how that should be said. I think someone said stay back. Essentially like stay back. Yeah, that makes more sense. Yeah, that's completely thrown me where I was. 18-year-old. Can play across the front three. Has been playing predominantly on the left for Club Brugge. Made his debut, like I say, for Stabæk as a 16-year-old, and I think I've got a feeling he played for Club Brugge when he was 16 as well. It might have been 17, but certainly made kind of waves last season when he scored on his Champions League debut. Against, I might have written it down who he scored against. I feel like it was Porto. Yes, it was Porto. Became the youngest player to ever score his debut in the Champions League. I don't want to get too far ahead at the moment. As of recording this, the talks that Spurs had were very much kind of those preliminary. Oh, I'm struggling today. You can tell it's a Sunday. Preliminary. Just we're interested, lads, kind of chats. Just to let you know we're here. I think mainly that's because there's been a lot of interest in him in Nusa. I think he's had Chelsea. There's reportedly Chelsea had a bid rejected in the summer for him. Liverpool and Arsenal have been looking at him. Quite a few teams again across Europe have been looking at him. And I've said this in so many kind of recent videos, podcasts, articles, that I just kind of always got this impression that Spurs are looking for another Destiny Udogie, Pat Matasar kind of deal. One of those where you get a star for the future that everyone else wants to get, but then send him back, let him develop where he was for a little bit longer, which the selling club is always more amenable to. They normally knock a little bit off the money as well, the price tag. I kind of have to, because I guess that's the equivalent of the loan fee. And then, in the 6 months to a year's time, you get a player who's that little bit more ready, a bit more mature, prepared for the move, whether that be the language, which I'm presuming is not going to be an issue. I think most Norwegians speak English, could be absolutely throwing that out there without it being the case, but seems to be any Scandinavian I've spoken to who just speaks the most amazing English. Maybe physically, that's the other thing. I think from what I understand, he has been developing physically quite a lot in the last year or so. He's not a small player. He's got a fair bit of kind of bulk to him. It is. I mean, we saw what's happened with Sarr and Udogie. It went back to Metz and Udinese respectively. Came back a year later in both cases. They were summer deals, weren't they? And Sarr obviously took a little bit longer because Conte wasn't that desperate to play him. Udogie went straight into Ange Postecoglou's lineup, and both of them are now young Premier League stars. Both had new contracts in the last month or so, tying them down. And I think are they both 2030? They're both very long deals, including the options that they've both got in them. So, Dele Alli is probably another example of a January signing that went back. He went back to MK's Dons, didn't he, for the rest of the season? And then he arrived ready to kind of just hit the ground running. So I can understand why Spurs will be looking at this. Again, now it's a case of trying to move on from that initial, hey guys, we're interested. And whether it does move on from that, there's a lot of talk in Norway that there are further talks planned because they want to get in there and tie up this deal. I should stress, if Spurs were to kind of push on this deal, it sounds like more than the Sarr and Udogie deal. Sarr and Udogie were both around the basic kind of initial figure was around 15 million. Sounds like, certainly from the reports in Norway, that you're looking at around 30 million for Nusa, which is a lot of money for someone you're sending back on loan, even if it is just for 6 months or so. But maybe that's quite literally the price you have to pay to secure one of the top young talents kind of in Europe right now. He does love the Premier League. He once described it as the best and most beautiful competition in the world. I've asked some people kind of in Norway that know him that little bit better, and they say the word that a couple of people used was humble. He's very much not a player whose kind of feet has left the ground because of how quick his ascent has been. He's, like I say, he's come into it as a 16-year-old, now 18, setting Champions League records. His Norway international exploits have been fantastic. He's only played 4 games, and I think he's already got a goal and 4 assists. He set up Haaland for a couple in different games. I think on his debut against Jordan, I think he scored and had an assist. Definitely set up Haaland in another couple of games, maybe one against Georgia. Martin Odegaard, he set up one of his goals. I can't remember who the other one was, but he's certainly kind of racked up the goals and assists already. If you're wondering kind of what player he is, a very fast dribbler is what people keep telling me, like one of the fastest in the Belgian league. Like I say, humble's the word I keep getting told, which is a good word for Postecoglou. He likes those kind of players. He likes those guys that are not getting carried away with themselves. He doesn't mind a little bit of kind of arrogance in your own ability, but ultimately he wants good people, good characters, and that sounds very much like what Nusa is like. You'd imagine he's very much been on the radar of Johan Lang, Spurs' new technical. He's been there since November now. Technical director. He'll obviously know his fellow Scandinavians. If you're not aware if you haven't watched previous videos. So Johan Lang played a key role in Spurs signing Timo Werner. He was one of his kind of players he was really pushing forward, and Postecoglou a very willing recipient because obviously he'd seen firsthand what Werner had done for Leipzig against Celtic, so he kind of knows what kind of player he is and how well he would fit his system. And he also, obviously, Radu Dragusin is going to be linked with Fabian Paratici because he signed him at Juventus. But I certainly know that Johan Lang and Rob McKenzie's chief scout did a lot of scouting work on Dragusin as well, just to double check he was right for the Postecoglou way and the Postecoglou system. They went over to Italy a couple of times. So, Johan Lang will be well aware. And to be fair, it's one of those, I think we can kind of talk all we like about scouting and recruitment. He's a player that's on a lot of clubs' radars because he is a very good young player. I've seen some people saying, he should have loads of goals and assists in the Belgian league. It's not really been like that. He is very much seen as a young player. They don't want to push too far too quickly. He has had an injury. I think it's been a back injury this season that's fragmented his season a little bit as well. Essentially, he's a very young, talented player, a bit of pace, dribbling ability. One of those, just such a mouldable player. There's so much you can do with him. You can create him into kind of a player that can play in any of those front 3 roles. He actually scored his first goal for Stayback as well. It's not going to be Stayback, is it? I'm killing that pronunciation probably. Actually, he did make his debut for Club Brugge. I've written that down here. He was still 16 when he made his debut for Club Brugge as well. So, it's all happened very quickly for him. Last season at Club Brugge, he's only 17 for most of the campaign, but he still made 32 appearances for them. He's actually the second youngest player to have scored in any Champions League game. Only Ansu Fati has done it when he was slightly younger. Well, slightly, 109 days younger. So we'll say about 3 months or so younger and a bit. 26 appearances this season, 3 goals, 3 assists, and like I say, international appearances, 4 games, 1 goal, 4 assists. He is really coming on leaps and bounds. Erik Thorsvedt, the Eric the Viking, who I haven't seen since would have been the game against Inter Legends, wasn't it? Spurs Stadium 2019. He's been talking about him this week. I think it was on Friday. He spoke about Nusa and Spurs. He said, I heard some hints. Sorry, I should say this was to the Norwegian media outlet Nettavisen. He said, I heard some hints about this a few weeks ago, so I knew it could be on the cards. It's really cool. Tottenham are a fantastic club to come to right now. They have such good tools now that they are doing a tremendously thorough job. It's also reassuring for the player that they know what they're buying. Nusa is still very young, but Postecoglou is not afraid to pick people. He will get his opportunities, and he is so good that he will take them. And on the actual deal itself, he said it's a huge price for a Belgian club. That's a lot of money for Tottenham, but it's half of some of the most expensive players they've bought. I guess Richarlison and Dembele, Lo Celso, they were all up around that kind of price range, weren't they? Double that. They must be confident in the qualities he has. There is clear interest here. Before, there used to be endless negotiations with Tottenham. They were supposed to squeeze the last pound, but we saw now with the last defender they bought from Genoa, we know it's Dragusin, then they got the player when it should have stood between them and Bayern Munich. It shows that Daniel Levy may have changed his style a bit. I think it's just the case that Spurs needed players quickly, and they got them done. And with Nusa, it is a case of you have to act quickly because everyone else is going to start getting in there. And yeah, like I say, we'll see kind of where this goes from now, and whether these talks do kind of lead to anything. Certainly a player that's kind of up there on their list. They like a few young players. They certainly have scouted another actual Belgian player in the Belgian league, Arthur Vermeeren. So have many other clubs. I should stress that. An aggregator kind of put that in an article yesterday, and that was taken as if he signed, sealed, delivered. Yes, Vermeeren's here. It's like they've watched him. Spurs have watched probably thousands of players in the last couple of seasons. He is a talented young player. Again, another 18-year-old. He's more of a central midfielder, deeper lying. Certainly seems to be an indication that there's a few clubs looking at him. I think he's another similar one that would maybe be a buy with a loan back around 25. So I think north of 25 million for him. Speaking to people that kind of cover the Belgian league, they say he needs to improve physically for the Premier League. Very raw player, but also incredibly talented. One of the better players in the Belgian league. Scored in Champions League this season, a couple of assists as well. So he is a talented player. I do think that's a good way of kind of gauging these young players is obviously the Champions League and what they've done there. And also international level, I think it's a good kind of one as well. So, yeah, keep an eye on him. But like I say, another player that there's been a lot. We'd actually know with Nusa there's been talks. Another player I've spoken to you about before, Samuel Iling-Junior, who's at Juventus. He's a little bit older. He's 20 years old, winger. He's another bass player, CAA bass player. Not that he plays the bass. England under-21 international. Islington born, but plays for Juventus. Made 12 appearances for them so far this season. Hasn't actually kind of hit the ground, set the world alight, but there is a kind of a real feeling around him that he is quite developing quite quickly. He had a good season last season, kind of a bit of more of a breakthrough season, I guess is the best way to put it. So another player who's a kind of a winger as well. So yeah, let's see what happens. Nusa is definitely very exciting. I haven't seen lots of him, so as always, do a lot of research whenever kind of you find out that they're looking or they're kind of a little bit next step on from just looking or scouting a player. They've actually kind of registered their interest. So you kind of have a proper look, and all the feedback was pretty glowing about him. There is a feeling, of course, that he's raw. You're going to be when you're 18 years old. But he's someone that a good coach like Postecoglou, an excellent coach like Postecoglou, could create a potential star out of. So, keep an eye on this week. Obviously, they haven't got that long now before the window closes. Was it 11 days? So, that might be one where, especially if they can kind of front or backload the deal in terms of add-ons for the future, things like that, that might be where they kind of sort something out. But then also equally for Club Brugge, they may want more money up front, and that's either Spurs have got to agree to that compromise, or that's where other clubs get in there. But like I say, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. Let's see what progresses from those initial preliminary talks. Yes, I can say it. Talking of young players, I did kind of a bit of digging on how Troy Parrott's move has been going out in the Netherlands, Excelsior Rotterdam. It came because I just saw on Friday night, he absolutely smashed it. They were playing Heung-min, Excelsior Rotterdam. They won 3-0 at home. And he set up a goal with a lovely low cross early on and then scored a really clever striker's goal, stole onto a back pass and then just nicely, clinically put it under the keeper. And that just kind of made me think, right, okay, I'm going to delve a little bit deeper into the loan, speak to some people, speak to people around him, people around the move, everything around the club in the Netherlands as well. And everything has just been so positive about him. He is really finding his groove right now. I was quite disappointed, actually. I didn't realise, because I don't pay a massive amount of attention to what happens on social media, but occasionally when I put out an article, I have a little look and see what comes of it. And obviously I get so many daft notifications. I was going to say stupid, I wasn't going to swear there. Daft notifications on my phone that come whenever, not only when I write an article, but then I get tagged in the million of aggregator posts. They all seem to kind of have a variation of each other's posts, almost the same words, and I'm always tagged in them. So my notification from my phone, I don't get it from just the original article, I get it from about 5 or 6 other aggregators doing them as well. And occasionally I will see kind of what pops up at the top of my phone. And yeah, I'd say maybe leaning towards people just wanting him sold or something. I think maybe there's this feeling that he's about 25, 26. He's 21. Does turn 22 in about a fortnight's time, maybe. I think it's early Feb. I feel like it was something like Feb 4th, 3rd, something like that. This is a guy that was like so highly rated when Spurs first brought him in from Belvedere in Ireland. He was the next Robbie Keane. I watched him so many times in the academy, playing a lot of the UEFA Youth League matches. He was a star. He scored so many goals. Scored against the likes of Barcelona, PSV Eindhoven, Inter Milan, I think Dortmund as well. I remember all of those. If you're not aware, the UEFA Youth League mirrors the Champions League. It has all of the fixtures in the group stage mirror it, and then in the obviously the knockouts, you have to go and it goes its separate way. And Troy scored so many terrific goals, and there was so much interest in him. And he had a couple of moves that didn't really work out for him. He did a loan to Millwall early on, which didn't quite work for him. Moved to Ipswich was okay. That was better. That was a kind of a step up for him. Then he had MK Don's move. That was a move that started well, had a dip. He kind of fell out of favour. Then he had a real chat with the boss there. Got himself kind of just a lot of self-motivation. I remember talking to him in Korea a couple of years back in the summer, and him just telling me about how he just had one of those moments where you reflect and you think, right, I'm doing it all wrong. I need to do this better. I need to do that better. I need to really show how much I've always wanted this. And he did. And second half of that season at MK Dons, he was brilliant. He scored some lovely goals. I think he got something like 10 goals and a fair few assists, maybe 7, 8 assists. Helped them into the playoffs, scored in the playoff semi-finals, second leg, I remember that. I think it was against Wickham, but they didn't end up going up. And that was a really good loan for him. Then he did a loan to Preston, which was okay. Played almost every game, played a lot of minutes, but just didn't really find his feet in front of goal. And then he just had a bit of a mare this summer. He was all kind of set and ready to come into... probably go on the tour, I would imagine. Postecoglou's the pre-season tour, but he came back with a groin injury, and it couldn't shake it off in time for the tour. So he ended up not going, and then so you kind of lose that crucial time of impressing. Even Dane Scarlett was injured, but just managed to recover kind of enough to be involved in the latter stages of the tour and caught Postecoglou's eye, and that could have been Troy Parrott. So a move was found for him to go to Excelsior Rotterdam. And yeah, he started off not slowly, more so having to prove himself, because this is his first top flight loan anywhere, of course. And you know what? He just found a way to get into teams, just scored goals, essentially. Scored goals early on. I think it was 3 or so in 4 games that got him into the starting lineup. And just, they rave about him over there. His work rate. He'll often kind of play off the left and come inside, or he'll play through the middle. He's proving. This is the irony, that he's had a few loans where he hasn't played where he's wanted to play. Troy has always wanted to be a central striker, the number 9. But actually, a few of his loans that he's been on, they've either played him out on the wing or they've played him as a support striker. And actually, it's ended up helping him, because it always reminds me, I'll always use this one as the example. Martin Jol playing Aaron Lennon on the left. And everyone was like, what? You've got like one of the best kind of right wingers in the Premier League, or certainly the most exciting, pacey right wingers in the Premier League. But what it did was it just taught him how to use his left foot more than anything. It taught him just to be less predictable, not always going down the right-hand side of a defender. And the biggest kind of reward that came of it that I remember was the winning goal against Chelsea, when Spurs beat them for the first time at White Hart Lane in years. And that all came because of him kind of cutting in on the weaker side. And and this is what's happened with Troy. He's really developed his all-round game, and he's just flying. Past 7 matches in the Eredivisie, 3 goals and 3 assists. They have a little winter break there, which obviously kind of interrupts his rhythm a little bit. But like I say, Friday night comes back, goal and an assist, and you know, as any kind of Dutch fans I've been talking to have spoken about, you know, Excelsior are a team that normally are in the lower reach of the table, and he is not going to get a lot of chances, not going to get a lot of kind of moments where he can really show how great he is. But he has taken every bit of slim pickings he can find. And they are, you know, they're up there in mid-table. I'm trying to think. I think they're about 11th. They're doing fine. And he's had a big part to play in that as well. He actually also had a shot against the crossbar in the second half early on Friday night. It was on the slide. But yeah, he was dominant in the game. It was really, really good. So from what I understand, by, you know, talking to various people around him and on the Dutch side of things as well, and at Spurs, he's really, really wants to still prove himself at Spurs. That is his key objective. Rather than going anywhere else, he wants to try and prove himself at Spurs. Spurs, to be fair, are keeping a very close eye on him. Andy Scolding, the head of football strategy, he's often kind of involved around the loans and the younger players, and he's been out to the Netherlands, I think 4 or 5 times, and he was there on Friday night watching him as well, reporting back to Postecoglou about how well he's done, no doubt. He's expected to remain there apparently for the rest of the season. I think that might actually be part of the deal, because it's a season-long one rather than a bit like Japhet Tanganga's. Japhet Tanganga's Augsburg had to actually negotiate with Spurs in order to end that loan. It wasn't meant to have a January break. It's more the domestic ones, not all of them, but some like Sergio Reguilon's and often the younger players. So yeah, he wants to make it at Spurs. Decision you'd imagine will be made next summer. Summer coming. I mean, he's got a contract till 2025. I understand that there's an option to take that up to 2026. He just kind of wants to catch Postecoglou's eye. You know, it would be great for him. In an ideal world, he comes back this summer and gets some minutes in pre-season just to show him what he can do. Just even training sessions, you know, would be great to show him what he can do, because he's catching the eye of a lot of clubs. From what I understand, Serie A clubs are looking at him, and Championship clubs again looking at him. And the beauty for foreign sides is that Troy, as he's a Republic of Ireland international, he's got 20 appearances for the Republic of Ireland, even though he's only, was he 21 now? Yeah, 21. And I think he's got 4 goals for Ireland as well. Because he's Irish, he's got a European passport. You know, none of this Brexit malarkey. He's still got a European passport. So that, in terms of registering for a lot of European sides, solves a lot of problems, or there are less problems there to tackle. So yeah, Serie A clubs are really looking at him, and an Italy move could be terrific for him. And this is why I find it all kind of just mad that he's getting written off already. And you know, there's so many players over the years that haven't quite developed at that kind of 18, 19 year age band. It takes them a little while longer. You know, obviously Harry Kane's the obvious one, but there's so many others. And I do think, because we live in a world now where you have the likes of, you know, Saka started quite young, didn't he? Foden as well, and Jude Bellingham obviously is just like a phenomenon. That kind of, you forget there's actually 99% of players actually start to really come into their own as they hit their early 20s. And it feels like Troy is starting to find that groove. As he told me, during the MK Don, after the MK Dons loan, it was about understanding the professional side of the game, how to look after himself better, how to kind of train, as well as, a lot of young players, they just look to the matches. They don't look to the training as much. And he kind of understood how important that side of it is. I'd love to see what happens with him. He's shown his adaptability this season, going to a new culture, new league. It's kind of had a bit of an effect on him, I think, a little bit like Marcus Edwards. He went to Excelsior Rotterdam as well, being a really kind of important move in his whole football education, I think is probably the best way to put it. He's doing well, is Troy. I've got, as you can probably tell, I've got a lot of time for Troy. I kind of, as soon as he came into the club, did very well for the under-18s, then got put straight into the under-21s, had his time with Pochettino. Kind of, it took him on that tour to, I think it was Singapore and Shanghai. Really kind of did well on that, and he was only 17, I think, at that time. Got his Carabao Cup debut. Then obviously Poch went. Mourinho went in. Mourinho initially was quite good for him, gave him his Premier League debut. It was a lovely moment at the end of that game when he kind of searched him out, gave him the ball, and made sure he had the match ball from his Premier League debut. I think he made a couple of Premier League appearances. Then came that FA Cup game against Norwich, and I think Mourinho had become a little bit irked about the buzz around Troy Parrott, because he could see him in training and could see that in his mind he wasn't quite ready yet, which probably was the way at that point. But yet Spurs at that point were missing, I think it was Harry Kane and Sonny. I think they were both out injured. So the fans were like, give him a chance. And I remember a press conference being in it and him saying, these fans probably don't even know what he looks like what kind of hair he's got, what colour of hair he is, and all that sort of stuff. And then, unfortunately, he played in that Norwich game. I think, he got the second game first in the Premier League, which I think was against Sheffield United, perhaps. And then plays in this game against Norwich, comes on for the last half hour, and then, unfortunately, he had the confidence to put his hand up to take a penalty in a shootout, but unfortunately, Tim Krul, penalty specialist, saves it. And Mourinho he used it a little bit too much for me in terms of saying, there you go, he's not ready. And he wasn't talking about the penalty save. He was talking more about the half an hour before that. But it's one of those. I didn't feel it was perfect for him. I think some more of the stuff on Emerson's coming out as I'm recording this. Suggesting maybe 25 million euros, which should be about 21.5 million, 21.4 million, something like that. So a little bit of an update on that. That's the beauty of having my laptop open as I'm seeing these things. So we'll see what happens with Troy. He's really taking his career in the right direction now, and he is still only 21 for another couple of weeks. I've always thought his technical ability, his finishing is superb. And he's bulked up a little bit. I remember seeing him in Korea and thinking, even from that stage, from the young player I'd seen in all the academy games, the under-21s, he'd bulked up a lot. And he's got stronger and stronger. Keep an eye on him, see what happens. Love to see him get a little bit of a kind of a look in the summer, in the training and everything. But either way, I think he's going to have a decent football career. I don't think anyone has to worry about that. So, yes, also I've just been sent some even Perisic quotes, which is very helpful, as we're going to talk about him. Actually, I think he was next on my little list of things to talk about. So, so even Perisic, he has now gone. The move that we kind of had mooted for quite a while, he is headed off to Hajduk Split, with them having an option to register him next season as well. It's a little bit different from the Eric Dyer one in that, yes, it's a loan with an option for him to take it on, but I don't think, like with the Eric Dyer one, the loan fee is built into the loan aspect of it, whereas with this, I think it is more a case of he's injured, go for it. Been a lot of talk about, it's a very strange thing that obviously everyone wants to know, are Spurs paying all of his wages? And before I get into this, I don't have a clear answer on this yet. A lot of us have been trying to find this from all different aspects of this. No one's really been able to say. He came out with this comment. I think it's actually, to be fair, it wasn't him. I think it was this is why I've just been sent some new quotes. I'm just saying new quotes. They were from the press conference he did. I just want to check in case there's anything here that changes what I'm about to say. We turned down other offers to go back to Hajduk. No, he started running on the pitch. I think it was 10 to 15 days ago. I read that somewhere else. Hasn't had a reaction, so that's a good thing for him. No, it's not in those quotes. The president of Hajduk Split, Jakubisic, said the loan agreement is until June the 30th, and then Ivan will play for €1. There's no pressure when he'll be back. Our main goal is next season. He'll be in a Hajduk next season as well. So yeah, it's that €1 thing. I think that has confused a lot of people. It would seem very odd for that to be made a big deal out of, and then for Spurs to be paying the rest of his wages. Because it's a bit like, well, then technically he's getting his Spurs wages plus €1. It doesn't really make much sense if Spurs are paying the full wages still. The only thing I would say is that I would wonder whether insurance covers a lot of his wages at the moment, or certainly a chunk of them. Because if you're not aware, these players are all very heavily insured in case they do get long-term injuries. And it's exactly what Ivan Perisic has got. So I do wonder whether, he is covered for a whole chunk of his wages anyway with Spurs. So I'm not sure how big a deal that is. I think it's one of those where people are understandably fixating on it because they're thinking if he's off the wage bill, that's a big chunk of another high-earning player off the bill. But I do wonder, I'd imagine insurance takes up a chunk of that. I would have thought. And I would have thought the loan aspect of it, rather than him just ripping up the contract, or Spurs ripping up the contract, is maybe financial fair play, perhaps, maybe helps him out. Because this is, as we're seeing with a lot of clubs, this is the one thing for all of the kind of frustrating aspects of the way Spurs have operated in the transfer market at times. It kind of feels like at the moment, all of that has brought us to this point where a lot of clubs are struggling. A lot of clubs are having to sell players. You know, we talk about Newcastle and Chelsea have got big problems. We don't know what's going to happen to Man City. Everton, Nottingham Forest obviously having issues. I think there's more to come. And Spurs are just sitting there going, told you. It's like, you've heard me say this in videos before. Daniel Levy did a thing where he spoke about these new strict rules that were coming in. And I remember myself saying his exact words. There's putting a lot of eggs in one basket. But to be fair, right now it looks like everyone's a little bit stuffed, and Spurs may well profit from that. Spurs, if you'll pardon the use of the word profit, may be able to go in and say, oh no, are you struggling? Well, we can take this player off you. That Conor Gallagher chap, is he available? You need the money. I don't think he ever would have spoken like that in his life, Daniel Levy, but it is, it's kind of one aspect of having... of being, I guess, a financially sound club and having a stadium that just brings in ridiculous amounts of money each season, not only for the football, but of course for all those other things that we go, oh no, I don't because I love NFL, but other aspects, like rugby and the boxing and the concerts, the Formula One go-karting track under the stadium, loads of conferences that they put on there and various events that go on at the stadium, and everything's got a dual use, even our media cafe that we use can be turned into just a public cafe, or the press conference room that we ask questions of Ange Postecoglou in the stadium. I think that's like a screening room as well, and there's so much more to it. So all of that contributes to this huge revenue coming in each season that, offsets a lot of what they're going to kind of be paying out. So in terms of financial fair play, they're not going to be stuffed like other clubs. They've obviously still got to be careful to a degree because they're not going to like a generator like a Man U. Man U with their ridiculous kind of fame they have across the world bring in so much money. But I would imagine from everything kind of we understand that Spurs are going to be in a more decent position. I think a lot of clubs, Spurs included, posted losses post-COVID, but you would imagine that's going to start really kind of righting itself with the new stadium. So Ivan Perisic headed off. It's great for him if he can get fit and get some game time just before the Euros. He can get himself over there for those championships. In terms of Spurs, it's just a shame we didn't get to see more of him in Postecoglou's setup. It looked like he was going to have a really decent impact under the Australian. It looked like he was going to be a guy that he could turn to in games, either from the start or from the bench. And he was making an impact. He got it. He understood it. And I think both of them really liked each other's way of working in the summer. And then, just a freak injury, non-contact injury, like Manor Solomon's, both non-contact injuries in the training pitch. And that's it, out for the Spurs season. Even Perisic hopes, he'll get a few weeks towards the end of the season and that'll be just right for him. Like I said he started running 10 to 15 days ago, so let's see. And best of luck to him. Overall, has it been a successful move? You can look at it two ways. One way, it was a free transfer. The other way, very highly paid member of the Spurs squad. Got enough assists last season. I think it was in double figures in assists. It was just difficult to kind of know where he would play because defending, he just wasn't a defender in the Premier League. It wasn't, obviously we're going to remember that Newcastle game as the low point, the nadir. But going forward, he just had a terrific delivery from his crosses, from his set pieces. And like I say, I think he would have gotten a lot of assists under Postecoglou this season. And it's a shame. But overall, I think just about a success because he was a free transfer. But just such a shame that this season just got chopped, really. You can kind of only see it as one season and a bit. What else on the loan stuff I was going to talk about? Alfie Devine made his debut for Plymouth and got an assist. So he's obviously left Port Vale, step up to the Championship team just to give him another challenge because there's a lot of hope around Spurs that he's going to be up there kind of giving, kind of being a bit of a backup, kind of alternative option, I guess, to James Maddison, potentially. He's a very good kind of number 8, fits him perfectly in the Postecoglou system. Postecoglou likes him. I saw him in pre-season playing as a number 8. I saw him playing as a winger. Did very well. Got to chat to him out there as well. Had a really nice chat to him in Singapore. Good move for him. Quiet, it sounds like, until he got his assist, which was good. I think he got about 77 minutes. The one they're all raving about now, Ashley Phillips. Ashley Phillips is smashing it out there on loan in Plymouth. First match, I think he was man of the match. Second game, raving about him. They were. I saw some quotes some fans saying he's the next Bobby Moore. I saw other Plymouth fans saying, he looks like a 28-year-old, let alone an 18-year-old. So nice little comments coming his way. And I guess now it's just about how he continues with that. But if he goes down that road, plays like that in the Championship, he's going to be in contention next season as one of the 4, you'd think, centre-backs. So, I wouldn't be stunned if you see maybe Alfie Dorrington go out next summer on loan to get his version of this, and Ashley Phillips becomes one of the centre-backs in rotation with Van der Ven, Romero and Dragusin. That would make sense. Actually, next up in the FA Cup 4th round, I think on Saturday, they're going to Joe Rodon's Leeds. So that'll be a kind of 3 loan players. Actually, it won't be 3 loan players because Phillips is eligible for it, but Alfie Devine isn't. He played for Port Vale in an earlier round, so he's not. As for Joe Rodon, I'm intrigued to see what happens with him because I think there could end up being a bit of a bidding war for him because Leeds are probably very disappointed they didn't get a loan option in his loan deal. A permanent option in his loan deal because he's been brilliant for them. The Leeds fans want him to stay forever. He's enjoying himself. But ultimately, I think Leeds would love to try and do some kind of deal this month for him, but they're also in this sticky situation of they don't know whether they're going to be a Premier League club next season. They hope they will, but they're not guaranteed Premier League football. And obviously the money that comes with that. And I think if I'm Joe Rodon, as much as I'm enjoying it, if you wait until the summer, who knows who comes in? Because he is impressing a lot of people. You know, I think he will be playing in the Premier League next season, regardless, whether it's with Leeds or someone else, unless he just decides out of loyalty, because they kind of were the ones that really gave him a chance to stick with them. But they've got to agree a deal with Spurs, because in Spurs' mind, he has a terrific season. He's got, I think, till 2025 his deal. You know, there's no need for Spurs to accept a rubbish offer, and I think when there'll be a little bit of a competition for his services, Jed Spence, as I started this, was starting for Genoa. Let me just have a little look, see if there's any update on that. But they had just kind of kicked off not long before I started this. He was, if I was believing the way it was lined up, I think he was playing on the left as a left wing back. Was he involved? It's 1-1 at the moment in that. It's in the second half. Doesn't say, because I'm looking at a really rubbish way of looking at it. Let me get a proper way. 1 second. Bear with me, caller. I just want to get the latest on this rather than just tell you something. Just in case you might have got an assist or something. I don't know. Genoa scored. No, it wasn't him that set up the goal. Have they still got him on the left in their lineups? They do. Number 90. Oh, he's actually on the left wing. Apologies, he's not a wing back. It's 4-4-2 they've got him playing as. And he's on the left wing. Interesting. Whether that's the case or not, whether that's a bit of an error. But yeah, good for Jed. Straight in there, getting game time. That's all that anyone wants. And then we'll see where he goes from that. What else? I had a little brief look before I came on to try and see what had happened with some of the players, because a lot of them played today in the foreign leagues. Eric Dyer was an unused sub. Bayern lost 1-0 at home to Werder Bremen. It's not working out for Bayern at the moment. In terms of the Bundesliga, 7 points clear, Leverkusen above them. Obviously, I think Leverkusen have played one game more, but yeah, it's not going their way at all. I'm intrigued to see what happens to the remainder of the season, because obviously, you know, you've got to say it, haven't you? Harry Kane's gone there to play for a massive club that is a club that, let's be honest, in the German league is meant to win that trophy. They're meant to lift the Bundesliga every season, really, with the finances they invest in to their team compared to everyone else in that division. And if he goes there and doesn't, it's a little bit like Poch going to PSG, isn't it? And in the first season not being able to win the title. And I'm sure it will not be through Harry Kane's fault if Bayern don't win the Bundesliga. You know, he's scoring ridiculous amounts of goals, but yeah, it's going to be said. I can see the memes and all this sort of, you can take the boy out of Tottenham and all that. And yes, I cannot help but think what he'd be like up front in a Postecoglou system. Funny enough, my wife was asking about that earlier. We don't often have kind of tactical chats about Spurs and everything, but she asked me kind of where would Spurs be if he was in the Postecoglou team. I said straight off the bat, top of the league. I genuinely believe that. I think with the amount of chances that are created in that team, I think he would just be scoring more than he even is at Bayern. I genuinely think that. But we mustn't go there. We can't think of that. It's not the case. He's not there. And some people get very annoyed even if you mention his name. They don't want to be reminded that he exists. Personally, he did wonderful things for Spurs. So I'm always happy to talk about Harry Kane from time to time. And I do wish him the best as well. So, talking about loans, where do Spurs sit in terms of the loan kind of rules and what they can do? We cannot forget that about a year ago, a little less than a year ago, Matt Doherty had to have his contract cancelled because Spurs had actually completely made a mess of the loan rules. And he was all set to go on loan to Atletico Madrid, but he couldn't. They had to actually cancel his contract so that he could just join them on a free. From what I understand, nowhere near those kind of issues this time. There are limits on international loans. I've had a lot of people someone's got a website, I can't remember what it is, but everyone's taken this screenshot of some rules that show the international loan restrictions, but missing the word international for some reason. It's very frustrating because everyone keeps asking me about it. And I have to kind of keep saying no. So, in 2022, I said that last time, didn't I? I said 2002, but 2022, FIFA approved changes to the loan rules in order to limit clubs from stockpiling talented players. And that meant that in that season, the 22-23 season, they'd only be allowed to have 8 international loan signings in and 8 loaned out. Then this season, so 23-24 season, that's dropped down to 7. Next season and then onwards, it will be 6. So this season, you're allowed 7 international loan signings in at any time and 7 international loan signings out at any time. So that's that. That's the international one. So that's the likes of Jed in Genoa. That's, I guess, Eric Dyer in Bayern. Even Perisic now as well, I suppose. Who else am I missing? Technically, Troy Parrott. Troy Parrott's a funny one. There's UEFA have him down as an under-21. And I should say, homegrown players and those under the age of 21 are exempt from the regulations. So Troy, even though he technically is 21, he is exempt. Oh, Tongi's another one. He is exempt if you're looking at UEFA rules, but FIFA rules consider him to be above the under-21 bracket. So I'm not entirely sure whether that means he is or he isn't. But ultimately, if you say he is, then you've got Spence, Tongi, Dyer, Parrott. That's 4. Plus, even Perisic's gone out 5. So technically, you could have another 2 international loans out all at one time. Japhet Tanganga was out on international loan at Augsburg, but has obviously now come back and gone to Millwall after a pretty much horrendous loan for him. I don't think that continues to count because the wording certainly that I could see in the FIFA documents were at any time rather than over the season, what you've had as a collective. So still, yeah, you've got latitude there to do another couple if you wanted. And then when it comes to domestic ones, actually, just very quickly on the international ones, the new rules have introduced a minimum duration of a loan deal, which is between 2 transfer windows, so 6 months, but the maximum duration of 1 year. So you can't have 18-month loan deals now. I think Decky was an 18-month loan deal. I feel like Jedson Fernandez was as well. So you can't do that anymore. It can only be a year at the most. Domestic loans, there's no limit from what I can tell. I honestly, to get to the bottom of this, domestic loan ones was the one that was the pain in the backside. I spoke to people at the Premier League. I spoke to people at Spurs. I poured through the EFL handbook as well on it. And pretty much everyone, the common consensus was technically there's no restriction on domestic loans across all leagues. There's restrictions in for clubs. So the number of players that a Premier League club can bring in on loan from another Premier League club is 4. But you're not allowed to have more than 1 from a single Premier League club. So, they could bring in 4 from different Premier League clubs, but only 1 from each of those clubs. Football League limit is 5 loan players in a match day squad. I think you might remember Jack Clark when he went back to Leeds and they couldn't register him because they already had 5 players in. They could register him in their squad for the season, but couldn't register him from certain matches. That was another rubbish move that didn't work out. Obviously flying high now. Jack Clark doing very well for Sunderland. But so technically the limits are on players coming in on loans. So for Spurs, it doesn't really make any difference. They could loan out as many as they want to different clubs, apart from they couldn't send, let's say, 2 to another Premier League club, a single Premier League club. Hopefully that makes sense. So international loans, 7. Domestic loans, as many as they want, as long as they don't send them to the same club, essentially. So that's the way that is. So they're okay at the moment for that. I'm trying to think who else might go out on loan. I suppose you could maybe put Brian Hill in there, potentially. I think it'd be a bit daft to loan him out again. And also, with the injuries that are there at Spurs, he just may need to play. He may have an opportunity to play. I don't think he's desperate to get out of Spurs either. I think he's, looking to impress Postecoglou. He enjoys the kind of football they're playing. But who knows, as the window kind of comes to its close at the end, whether Spurs, a deal comes in. I know there's a few Italian clubs interested in him. I think I saw PSV linked with him as well in the Netherlands. Whether there's a chance of, if they get a deal that's also got a permanent obligation in it, maybe they look at it and think, look, is he ever going to fully break into this team? We don't know. Keep an eye on him. Ryan Sessegnon, he's a maybe. obviously came back against Burnley, had a little issue in that game just purely because he'd been out for 11 months and was trying to play football again. But I think he was expected to be okay for this kind of run of games. We'll find out on Thursday at the press conference, Postecoglou's one. Maybe there's a feeling perhaps we send him out on loan, but then also you've got to look at the fact that Ben Davies is out for, 4 or 5 weeks, potentially earlier if he can kind of do what he normally does. But you probably need Ryan Sessegnon as the backup to Destiny Udogie then. So I don't know whether you can afford to let him go, really. But then they might just think if we get a good offer, he's played so little games for Spurs over the years, you just take what you can get. It's a difficult one with Sess. In terms of after that, then you've got younger players. Junson Sutbell, I'd be shocked if he doesn't get a loan towards the end of this window. That was the plan for him, really, when he came in last year, was to get a quick loan. But he got a bit of an injury. He came in about a year ago. Got an injury that ended his season. And he's done very well this season. It's either kind of maybe between him and Will Lancashire. Will Lancashire is doing brilliantly as well, scoring a lot of goals for the under-21s. I guess you'd probably do either or with them. Because, I mean, what's Judson Sutbell's about 20. Will Lancashire, I think, is still 18. Probably you let the older player go out, I'd imagine. You've got the likes of Jamie Donnelly, Alfie Dorrington. I think you keep them around now. Jamie, for the fact that the under-21s need him, but also for the fact that you keep him around that first team squad. Alfie Dorrington, now Ashley Phillips gone out, I think you'd be mad if you let him go, because who knows what happens with injuries again or suspensions. And that's it, really. There's a few Iago Santiago, Alfie Whiteman, maybe players like that potentially get a loan. Niall John, he probably really could do with certainly a better loan than the Charlton loan he went on. We'll see what happens with them. Real Madrid turned around their game. They were 2-0 down against Almira at home. So I'm breaking news to you that will be hours after the final whistle. Keep an eye on the loan market. I think that's where we'll see another one or two, I'd imagine. Okay, I think for now that's probably enough of the things I can kind of talk about that have happened. So I'll answer as many as I can from questions that you left under the previous video, which you very kindly did after I asked for them. Rice and Peas 92 asks, with how well Rodon is doing at Leeds, do you think he is seen as a sellable asset with decent value or coming in as the full centre-back? If I'm brutally honest, and I think Joe, I'm sure, would know this as well, I think it's probably his time at Spurs is coming to a close. If I'm Joe Rodon, I'm probably thinking I've been mucked about a little bit over the years by Spurs. And he's done very well at Leeds. He's very much wanted. And like I say, I think other clubs will want him as well. So I think Spurs probably not getting an option for him in that deal is going to work out for them. As long as he doesn't get injured or have a rotten second half of the season, which is no suggestions he will at this point, they'll get good money for him. They'll be able to at least get their fee they paid Swansea for him. I'm trying to remember how much that was now. Was it about 12, 14? I can't remember. But I would imagine they'll get that back. And then maybe some if he goes to a Premier League team. I don't know the answer to this. Johnny Comet asks, question for you. Did anything come of Everton asking Levy to renegotiate the Delhi contract? It seems to have been swept under the rug. I haven't heard anything about that. I mean, it obviously didn't benefit Spurs in any way to kind of chuck away that. It was like if he played a certain amount of games, I feel like it was 20 appearances. But then Delhi did have a bit of a setback, so it's not like he'd kind of been right on the fringes of coming back. We'll find out, I guess. There's the only way on that one. You're right. It has been swept under the rug. I haven't asked around about that in an age. Navala Robert 3799 asked, did you see the new Indiana Jones game trailer? I did. It looks good fun. First person, which I was surprised at. Little bits of third person stuff, but it's on Xbox. I don't have an Xbox. I'm a PlayStation man, so I don't know whether I'd buy another console just to play one game. Daniel Harris 3180 asks, has there been any rumours about Dybala? God, Dybala, there's a name from the past. To your knowledge, is there any reason why we wouldn't go after him? I read his release clause is 17 million. I feel like that would be the ambition signing we've lacked for so many years. How can us fans see these obvious moves and the board can't? It's a tough one with him. He's a terrific player. Of course he is. I think I probably would have loved him back in the day, back then, when Pochettino wanted him. That was the season they got Lo Celso instead, wasn't it? He has a lot of injury issues. Would he be able to deal with the demands of the Postecoglou system and the high pressing? I don't know. Don't get me wrong, terrific player, very talented player, but ultimately my feeling would be is if the release clause is 17 million and it's that obvious, it would suggest to me that either Postecoglou doesn't think he's the greatest fit or Dybala isn't that interested in coming to Spurs. It's got to be one of those, because you're right. For that price, you would probably go for him if you felt that he was perfect for your team. But then same could be said about any club, really. Why are they not going for him? I do wonder if it's the injuries, potentially. Erenkok 2915. Do you know Spurs are still partnered with Hugo Boss? Someone else asked me that. There's a lot of people very interested in whether Spurs clothing partners are. I don't know. They were wearing something different the other day because their name was splashed all over it. They were wearing this kind of funny, almost like a shirt jacket thing. I don't know. I'm trying to think if I've seen any Hugo Boss stuff around the club. Normally they kind of splash it on all their social media stuff, in a Hugo Boss suits, but I haven't seen that, so maybe not. Gordon Aria 9444 asks, much has been made about Johan Lang and the recruitment team. What about Scott Munn? Club seems to be more organised and disciplined the past few months. What's your take on Scott Munn? Everyone I've asked about him has good things to say. He certainly sounds like he's more the admin guy, and that sounds very disparaging. That's not meant to be. It's more exactly like you said there, organisation and getting everything in order within the club. He's a manager, as in a management kind of guy. He is a guy that will sort out all of that, make sure there's best practices, make sure that everyone in each position is the best person he can possibly get for the job. I've heard people saying they've seen both sides of him. They've seen the tough side of him, and they've seen a very pleasant, convivial side to him. I haven't heard a bad word about him yet. Normally they do come out about most people eventually, because everyone has always got an axe to grind. There's always agendas in football clubs. But certainly, only good stuff. I don't think he's the kind of guy you're ever going to see involved in transfer negotiations, probably, or anything like that. I mean, certainly with Dragusin, the ones that working in the early hours was Lang and Daniel Levy. Scott Munn, like I say, is the guy that kind of comes in and sorts out. That's the best way to say it. The organisation, the structure, the best practice, and he brings in brings in the people who can do the best job in each role. So that's pretty much what he does, and what he did with the City Group, with China, and also back in the Melbourne days as well. Darren Biasai 3513. We asked about the loan stuff. That's fine. We've answered that, and the limits. I don't know. Pam Newland 4680 asks, I note that Danny Rose was seen in Spurs fans' seats. Have you seen him recently? Has Danny met Ange? He never seemed to want to leave. Any place for him, such as there are with Jermaine Defoe, Michael Dawes? I don't know. I have. Who have I seen at the training ground? I saw Andros Townsend a few months back. I think before he went to Luton, I think he was maybe coming there to keep fit. I feel like I did see Danny Rose. Yeah, I think it wasn't that long ago. I feel it was maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago at the training ground. I don't know what I mean. It could be anything. It could be just coming back to see the under-21s. It got a brilliant relationship with the under-21s and Wayne Burnett. You might remember that season. He wasn't registered for the Premier League squad. He just did loads of stuff with under-21s and really helped them out. So it may just be that. Seems to be doing a lot of media punditry work as well at the moment. If he's got any designs of going into coaching, Spurs are terrific for that. Spurs invite a lot of former players to come back and progress. John McDermott used to be very good at that. And then Dean Rastrick, Obviously, it's Simon Davies in that kind of overarching academy head role. And I'm sure there'll be more. Jermaine Defoe doing very well with, I think it's the under-16s. Who knows? Yeah, watch this space with Danny Rose. We've got Pamela Newland also asked me, I know this is personal, but is your wife happier this year? You sure seem happier, or are you able to switch off from work? I'm very good at that, I'd say. I'm quite good that when it's a day off, I'll keep a little eye on little things that are happening at Spurs, but it would have to be something major that I'd been told or that I could see was breaking for me to kind of crack on with it. Normally, I'll just give it to someone else who's working for my company and let them crack on. I do these videos on my days off. That is one thing, actually, to be fair, I do, but that's fine. No, I think we're all as happy as we always have been. I think just in terms of professionally, it's more fun to cover Spurs when they're playing well. I think that's probably why I seem a bit cheerier, because I'm enjoying not only covering Spurs but watching them. You know, this Postecoglou Spurs is a mile away. That on-air sign keeps creaking. Every time I move, the sofa creaks against it. I'm sorry if it picks up on the microphone. That's a funny thing as well with the microphone. It's just the phone's microphone. Some people can hear it absolutely fine. When I play it back on my phone, it's blaring out. But I have also had some people say that it sounds very quiet. So I'm sorry if you're one of those who hears it a little bit quietly. Fender342 asks, I know there was a half-time farewell, but do you think the club have any plans or will to do a testimonial for Hugo at some point, maybe when he actually retires? Seems like he deserves one for what he did for the club, and it would give them a chance to do a farewell. Testimonial is a funny one. And it would give a farewell to a lot of players who had left without a proper send-off, like Vertonghen, Dembele, Toby, Bale. You didn't mention it, but Harry Kane as well. Testimonials, they're not such a done thing anymore. Every time a player leaves, I see people asking, will they get a testimonial? I mean, Eric Dyer was almost, technically, you could say he's employed long enough that he's almost been the 10 years. Testimonials back in the day were more a way of, I guess, raising money for players that were retiring because they might need it. Sometimes they would do them for charity, of course, as well. But I wouldn't say you see a lot of them nowadays. It's very rare. I would be surprised, I'll put it that way. Unless he does some charity game, that's a completely different thing. Like Steve Jukes, the kit man, did a brilliant charity game in May where loads of the old, some Pochettino players, some Martin Jol players as well went back to, Harry Redknapp players. Actually, was it any Pochettino players? I might be going to... Yeah, technically Michael Dawson was still playing for Pochettino at the start. Or did he? Did he leave just before? Ooh. Did he leave at the same time as Ledders? I can't remember. But either way, that was a terrific one, and that was all done for charity as well. So I think that's more like it, because obviously players, they're very well paid nowadays compared to maybe what they were in the past, and they probably don't need a testimonial in that aspect. But yeah, I think that's kind of why these half-time farewells now are the thing, and I have no doubts that Harry Kane will come back and do that at some point. I'd imagine Vertonghen as well. Bale did. I think they will all at some point. Daniel Moraido 606 asks, what do you make of the loan returnees, Reguilon, Tanganga and Devine? What different futures do you see for them short and long term? Also, are you on Letterboxd for movies? I am on Letterboxd. I'm awful with it in terms of I will see it, remember I've got it, go on it and get lost for the entire evening on it and do loads of reviews, mainly scores and ratings rather than actual reviews. But then I'll forget I have it for about 2 or 3 months, and I'll have to update it again with everything, because you know what I'm like, I'm a bit of a movie geek, so there's so many to kind of go through on there. On the loan returnees, Reguilon, obviously he's headed off to Brentford. Good move for him. They are crying out for a natural left back with Rico Henry getting that knee injury in September. He's out for the season. They've kind of been putting midfielders, like makeshift left backs in there, so Reguilon should get plenty of game time. I think, yeah, his future lies elsewhere, and hopefully for him, this doesn't have an option, I don't think, this loan deal, so he can go there, hopefully do well, and again, a bit like Joe Rodon, bump up his price, and Spurs can get a good deal for him in the summer. Jaffet Yeah, Jeffrick's just had a mare, hasn't he? He's never really played a long burst of regular football. It's either been injuries or just the fact that he's a versatile jack of all trades has never really helped him in a way. But hopefully Millwall now gets a run of games this season and can get his career back on track. But I don't think his future's at Spurs either. Alfie Devine, like I said earlier, I do think his long-term future's at Spurs. And I wouldn't be stunned, I've used that expression a lot today, I would have thought that if he comes back and shows a massive development that they're all seeing this season in pre-season, then I would imagine they'll step him up to the first team squad, unless there's just so many bodies that they think maybe we loan him to another Premier League team this season. Good question. Steve Burrows, 6511. What would be our best 11? My thoughts are that maybe our two latest signings don't make it. Yeah, I think I did this in the week. I think Guesty and I were talking about this on the podcast. I think right now, and this is if everyone is fit and is at the peak of their powers, and it's very difficult, especially in midfield, I would say it's the back five we saw the other day. Vicario, Porro, Romero, Van der Ven, Udogi. It's down, obviously, to Dragusin to force his way in there. Midfield, I think you're going Maddison, maybe when they're at the top of their game, Basuma Bentancur. I think that would be incredible. But Pat Matazar is going to have a lot to say about that, of course, as are a few other midfielders. Up front, I think it's probably, when they're all fit and firing at the moment, you'd say Son, Richarlison and Kulusevski, I think. But like I say, Johnson, Werner will have a lot to say about that. Who knows what Manor Solomon's going to bring with a kind of more his kind of fitness up there and regular game time. And you've got so many others as well. Bright Hill, Felice, Jamie Donnelly could come along in the second half of the season. But that's probably the strongest 11. But everyone will have their own opinion on that. What else we got? James Cullen asks, 4869, do you think Ange could play Van der Ven, Romero and Dragusin as a back three? Maybe. They were kind of doing that towards the end of the game the other day at one point, although Van der Ven did go off right at the end, didn't he? With cramp. Could do. I think it may be more something within a game changing rather than starting a game like that, but who knows? Duncan Matthews asks, how's the Duolingo Italian going? Are you now taking up Australian? I've just started on the French one. It's going well. Yeah, I'm getting there. I can definitely read a lot of Italian. My reading of Italian is very good. Speaking of it, it's still a bit iffy, as you can understand and appreciate. But pronunciation isn't the greatest. But I can certainly read a lot. But then I kind of could beforehand, because I got a bit of a weird head start, because when I was young, for some unknown reason at this point in life, I learned Latin. And while it's a dead language and many people would think, what? Actually, because it's the base of most European languages, because those Romans did a fair bit of invading, I actually can look at a lot of European languages and kind of get a rough gist of maybe what they're saying because of the Latin connections. A lot of the words have a lot of similar feel to the original Latin words. I wouldn't say I'm, could say a Latin sentence or remember any of that, but definitely when I see the words, I kind of a rough jumble in my mind of what they are. But yeah, it's what's this? Sorry, the Tottenham Hotspur Supporters Trust have just put out something. Let's talk about the year so far. I've got a thing with the trust this week. Doing a Q&A with a few other Spurs journalists. I can't remember who was confirmed in it. I feel like it's Dan Kilpatrick, Charlie Eccleshare, maybe Michael Bridge from Sky. I can't remember who else is doing it, but that should be good fun. Bit of a Q&A and first kind of... No, actually, that's a lie. No, I did do one, didn't I, about 3 or 4 years ago. But that was kind of when I was... Actually, it'd been longer than that, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, when I was kind of a bit new on the Spurs beat. Whereas, God, I'm a veteran now. It's going to be interesting. Yeah, doing that in London on Wednesday night. All for charity. George Otto asks, why won't the club give you a tour of the lodge Do we need to start a petition to get you a key to the training ground? Feel free to address this in the Q&A. That was because I said I'd asked for a tour of the lodge and hadn't had one yet. I'll get there. Don't worry. I'll get in there. That sounded weird. It sounded like I'm going to break in the middle of the night. Oh, crikey. Michael Harvey, 6531. It's always interesting when you talk about the backroom staff. How many staff do you think work with the first team? Do you think there'll be a big revamp with the structure of the academy again? They've had a fair bit of a revamp in recent years anyway, the academy. I think they're always looking at best practices, and Scott Munn will continue to do that with them as well. In terms of the first team, there's so many. I mean, coaching staff alone, you've got Matthew Wells, Ryan Mason, Chris Davies, of course, the assistant boss, Mile Jedinak, Rob Birch, the goalkeeping coach, and then there's so many different fitness and conditioning coaches, sports scientists that work with them as well. You'll see various training videos where you'll see the players going up and like warm like hugs or kind of high fives to people that they know, and you'll be thinking, who is that? And it is because the players probably spend as much time with sports science staff and physio fitness people as they do any other coaches. So yeah, lots and lots. It's, you know, for the likes of myself who's played like Saturday and Sunday football and all of that, and you know, you literally have one person, maybe an assistant boss who like, and someone that runs on with a sponge occasionally when you get whacked. Yeah, it's a different world. It's incredible. Nitra8DJ asks, do you think we'll go for an out-and-out striker at some point? And what are your 3 top war films, TV shows? Mine are Hacksaw Ridge, Saving Private Ryan, and Band of Brothers. Oh, well, first one, out-and-out striker at some point. I mean, technically got Villiers. There's a lot of hope that maybe he can develop into that kind of player. I would imagine, though, yes, in the summer, you'd think they'd look for another kind of top, a player to play up top, a number 9 type, you would have thought. I guess it depends how this season kind of shakes up, really. But yes, I would imagine that's kind of one of the next ones on the list, really. In terms of the war films and TV shows, Hacksaw Ridge was superb. Saving Private Ryan is definitely up there, even just for the start alone. Band of Brothers is brilliant. I love The Pacific. Really looking forward to the new one that's coming on to Apple. Is it Masters of the Year? I'm trying to remember. It's like the third one from Spielberg and Hanks. I think it's got Austin Butler, the Elvis guy, in it. I'm trying to think of other ones that I've really liked. I really liked, there was a Canadian one. It's a bit kind of random, but I think it was Passchendaele. It starred Paul Gross, who used to be the guy in Due South. Do you remember that with the Mountie? It was like a massive. It was probably, I think it was supposed to be one of the most expensive Canadian films ever made. I really used to like that film. It was very well done. Honestly, there's so many war films. They'll probably kind of come to me as I'm talking about this, but yeah. I suppose the ones that just give you just an insight into just how awful it all was. And that's kind of it. You know, you don't want anything kind of glorified. You just see how just horrendous it was for these guys and women and everyone involved in it. Just anything. We're very kind of, it's not something anyone wants to ever be involved in. What else we got here? Oh, I don't know the answer to that. I am over here asked, did you spot who got the armband once Bentancur was subbed off in the Burnley game? I don't. It's a great question. If I find out, I shall. I'll mention that in one of the next ones. Someone asking about financial fair play. It's kind of, we've covered that. Keith Johnson asks, have you ever thought about chucking a cheeky ask to Big Ange, asking him to plug your podcast? I don't know whether you mean this or the podcast to do with Guesty, Golden Guest Talk Tottenham. Some people call this, I kind of, because I've called it a video podcast of sorts, I guess, myself in the past. No, I would never, ever do that with Ange Postecoglou. You know how that would turn out. It would not be a good thing to do. Frank with Beans asks, would you watch a new Indiana Jones series if they made it like the Bond movies with an independent story and new actors? And if so, who would you cast as Indy? I probably would, because I love Indiana Jones stuff, but I kind of feel like, for me, Indiana Jones is Harrison Ford is Indiana Jones. I don't know if I'd really. I used to, when I was young, love the old Young Indiana Jones Chronicles. That's a bit different if you're doing a younger version of the character. But no, I probably wouldn't want that. I don't know why, because yeah, you're right. Bond, they change the actor all the time, but just for me, Indiana Jones is just that little bit different. And I do it with Superman, I guess, which I've always loved as a kid as well. Josh Rose, 8284. Do you play Football Manager? If you don't, have you ever played it? I used to be obsessed with Football Manager. Honestly, it would take up a lot of my life. I would play it all the time. I would know all the obscure footballers from all the other countries. Tonton Zula Makuku, Freddie Adu, obviously. They're not as obscure, but anyone that's played Football Manager will know what wonder kids they were. I don't have as much time now. I have got the latest one, but I haven't got cracking into it yet. There's kind of an aspect of, I do find that as I'm getting older, that when I'm not covering football and writing about football and reporting on football, I like to kind of do other stuff. Hence the movies, NFL, love a bit of NFL. Try and just kind of not drain myself of the love of football that I have by overwatching it and overdoing stuff to do with it. I'll still play FIFA and things like that. And like I said, I will play Football Manager, but I definitely am not as obsessive at it as I used to be. So yeah, hopefully that answers that question. It's a question it's technically a question for me to ask, Ange. The Baron one asks, how does the boss see his future? Is it managing a big European team and having an endless budget, or bringing a team like Spurs into the top tier of European football and cementing a legacy? Maybe you could ask Ange. It's a difficult one. He was a Liverpool fan growing up, but he's kind of played that down a little bit recently when they played Liverpool. Of course he would. I would imagine creating a legacy at Spurs and making them one of the best has got to be a very attractive proposition. It's all laid out there for someone to do that with Spurs. And he did mention recently about hoping to put down some roots kind of with a new house. And because I don't think he ever properly moved into a house in Glasgow, I think. As in maybe rented, I don't know. But certainly kind of hinted at that possibility. Hoped it would be very soon that he'd put down some roots. Any idea? Don't know that one. That's a good one, that. And someone knows the answer. Fair play. So McPherson2639 asks, when did you develop your outro tagline and is it inspired anything? And I'm trying to remember what I say now. It's something like, stay safe, stay healthy, stay safe, look after yourself, something like that. And Jimboy3622 said he started saying it during COVID. I did. That's exactly what happened. Just at a time when people were, some people were in a really bad way and people were feeling rough as well. People kind of feeling a little bit lost and alone, some people as well. And that just ended up weirdly being my way. I kind of signed off and it's just stuck. Because it applies to just normal life anyway. So, yeah, good question, that. Cole Brazier asks, what are your current views on VAR? When it first came in, I was all for it, but as time has gone on, all the baffling decisions and errors plus the time it takes maybe want to get rid of it. Then I see some horrendous mistakes made in championship games, and I'm not so sure. Yeah, I get that in that it is... you do see a lot of other games where VAR isn't used and you're like, oh my goodness, how did you miss that? I just can't bring myself to like it though. I just can't. I just think it delays the game too much. I hate the fact that you can't properly celebrate a goal. I don't. I'm not a massive fan of it. I think Ange says this, to be fair, and it's exactly kind of my feelings. I don't think that much was wrong with the game, that it required that. It just wasn't really necessary. So I was just looking now, I thought there was something new would come through on a player, but it hasn't, so that's fine. What else we got here? Another. I like the fact that he's kind of mixed up some of these, not just football ones. Lee Spurs asked, did you watch Joker? Are you looking forward to Joker 2 with that famous singer? I can't remember her name, but she'll play Harley Quinn, Lady Gaga. I did watch Joker. I did like it. Joaquin Phoenix is just superb in so many things. Joker 2, yeah. I'm intrigued to see whether they can where they go with it, because it almost felt like a bit of a one-off one for me. So I'm intrigued to see how they turn it into, or how they follow it up and go on with it. What else we got? That's not a question. Serpentino asks, how do you feel about the prospect of seeing Ange Ball versus Nuno and Mourinho in the Premier League? Well, we don't know about Mourinho yet. Obviously, it hasn't worked out for him at Roma, and they've parted company. Nuno's doing all right at Forest, doing fine. They were kind of unlucky against Brentford. Bit of that weird Tony free kick that's got everyone very angered. I would say the amount of times people move the ball around before taking a free kick, it doesn't make it right, but it is something that's quite common. What else we got? That's an interesting one. Yeah, Tobster51 UK asks, rumours about the club interest in Hayden Hackney are exciting, of course, but I can't help wondering what effect such interest that would be. Yeah, so very pedantic. Such interest can have on the likes of Jamie Donnelly and Alfie Devine, who are of a similar age, player type, and just as exciting. Do you think there's room for all three to flourish behind Madders and Kulu in the number 10 role? Yeah, Hayden Hackney, from what I understand, a bit of interest. I think he's just one of those very young players, what is he, at Middlesbrough, that everyone is kind of keeping a bit of an eye on. Yeah, I do think there is an element of being worried that you're going to push some of the players you have who are very talented down the pecking order. I think there was a little fear of that when Ashley Phillips came in, and you had Alfie Dorrington, who obviously was a terrific young centre-back, and whether it just knocks his career down a step or two, we'll see. Yeah, I think you have to take that into account. I think your first thought should be, have we got an academy player that comes through? Myself, I know there's a lot of football fans that don't think that. They think first of the transfer rather than the academy. I think a club's view is to look at the academy first. And I'm sure, I hope that's what they do anyway. There's no question about Scott Munn. We've spoken about that. David and Quist 1998. Do you think Gallagher would suit the Postecoglou system? Yeah, I think he would. I do. I quite like Conor Gallagher. See some kind of Spurs fans saying they probably wouldn't like him, but I can see why Postecoglou would like him. I think he would be a good fit. James Dunn, can you please let us know how you keep that hair looking so good? I don't. I just literally comb it. Put a little bit of wax in it occasionally. Not candle wax, styling wax. Yeah, when I was a kid, I used to have like a pudding bowl haircut. There's some cracking photos of me when I'm very, very young in the family archives. For a couple of times I had a crop, a very close crop as well, which was really cool the first time. I'm letting you into this. Went into the hairdressers with a picture of Brad Pitt in the movie Seven. And I just said to him, oh yeah, can I have that please? That looks really cool. This was when I was like, God, what would I have been about? 16, maybe 17. I'm trying to remember how old I would have been when that came out. It's one of my favourite films, Seven. And the hairdresser, or the barber, just looked at it and went, yeah, that's not really a hairstyle, mate. It's literally, he's gone on the movie set and they've just kind of messed his hair up a bit. I was like, well, something like that. And to be fair, I had a crop that was really cool. And I was like, yeah, I look excellent. Yeah. And then I went and had another one done a couple of months later and it was horrendous. I looked just awful with it. And I've never had one since. I've always gone back to what I had pre-crop, which is this kind of curtains thing, which isn't the trendiest style in the world. But yeah, it's always been my kind of way. What else we got? IR Amortrella asks, can you paint that on-air sign blue, please? Yeah, I can't. No, I can't. I get it. It's red and white. I know. But it's a gift from my daughter, so no, I'm not going to paint it blue. But I understand why. I got to give this wall a paint at some point. I'm thinking of maybe doing it more of a navy colour at some point. But it's a tricky wall to paint because there's like, you can't see it, but there's shelves above it. There's loads of stuff. And it's the kind of thing I'd make an absolute mess of. My wife's actually better at painting than me, way better than me. Painting rooms. What else we got? MA89, where do you think we'll finish in the league this season? Who will be in places 1 to 5? I've said before, so I'm going to stick with it. I think the Spurs will finish top 3. I think Man City will win it. I would imagine Liverpool maybe second. Yeah, we'll see. I've just got a feeling that Spurs might finish above Arsenal. We'll see. Arsenal are quite good at grinding out results, but I just feel like Spurs have just got something about them now this season. And I think with everyone coming back from injuries, hopefully staying away from injuries, they're going to have a very strong squad, I think. What else we got? Oh, I haven't even mentioned about Sonny. Of course, Sonny, Basuma and Sarr away at their various competitions. Sonny has scored a lovely Panenka penalty yesterday. I think they drew South Korea in the end. And Sarr's back playing, which is great after his little hamstring issue. Basuma, only judging on reports from over there, that for Mali he's had some kind of, I don't know how to describe it. It's very difficult. I don't want to use, if you just say the word malaria, everyone instantly thinks the worst. But there's certainly, that was the word they're using. But I haven't heard that used from anyone around Spurs or anything. But just some players, they were saying within the camp, kind of had some just sickness and feeling a little bit weak. But I don't know exactly. But the fact that he's playing, as in he came off the bench, he played in the first game, started, didn't play particularly great from what people were saying, but second game came off the bench towards the end. I think if it's something that's really serious or contagious or anything, you're not on that pitch at all. You're not around anyone. So I don't know exactly how that works myself. So I'm not going to probably go into it because I'm just going to make a complete mess of it. But please feel free, internet experts. There's always lots of people who seem to know a lot about everything. So please, give your takes underneath in the comments. I'm going to have to probably wrap this up in a minute. But I don't know how you pronounce this. Everyone, all the words will run together. Guido de Court official asked, if you could interview one player, past and present, who would that be? And what would you ask them if you knew they couldn't lie or avert the question? Ooh, good question. Player from the past. I've spoken to Berbatov. I've spoken to quite a few players from the past. That's the thing. There's not many I didn't interview. I would probably, obviously, if we're talking about it doesn't matter whether they're alive or not, I would love to go back in time and obviously speak to someone like Jimmy Greaves. Would have been fantastic back in the day. I mean, what an incredible player. From the present, I mean, obviously, I've got access to pretty much all the players now. The new signings, have spoken to all of the... Obviously, I think just one of the new signings would be lovely. Speak to Timo Werner and ask him, kind of go a bit more in depth about his time at Chelsea and where he felt it went wrong. And Dragishin, maybe go a little bit more in depth about what those last 24 hours or so were like before he agreed to sign for Spurs. That'd be interesting. Argendo8400, you're looking forward to a new season of True Detective? I am. It's on my planner, ready to watch. Craig2565, do your company cover all your costs when travelling to away games, travel, food, drink and accommodation? Yes, travel certainly. If I have to stay over, yes. The other stuff, that's part of a journalist's kind of job, I guess. Josh Fitzgerald 11 asks, have you watched Saltburn yet, and have you watched Reacher? Yes and yes. Saltburn, wow, it's got some interesting moments. I enjoyed it. I actually thought it was a good film. The ending was very much what I expected it to be. But yeah, there were some moments where you're like, whoa. Reacher, yes, I have watched that. I thought it was good in moments, season 2. I still think I preferred season 1. I just kind of always loved the idea of someone very highly trained and very cool going into like a small town and then wherever it is and sorting out that town's problems because people underestimate them. I love that. Whereas season 2 felt a little bit more formulaic for me, although it was cool to see some of the crew. What else we got? I think that's probably a good place to wrap up, to be honest. I'll answer that one because that's quite good. I'll finish with that one. Just wondering, why do you do the Golden Guest podcast in a different room to the solo vids? Hallowed Turf asked that. It's the same room. I just sit over there, which you can't see. I sit at my desk to do the podcast because it's got a big podcast microphone attached to it, and it's just an easier place to do it. Whereas this is a little bit different. I guess it differentiates them as well. So there you go. Good place to finish there. Apologies for those that only wanted Spurs stuff, and there was some different questions in there, but you know what I'm like. I like different things and different subjects and topics. Who knows? Maybe one day I'll do some kind of podcast talking about other things as well for anyone that prefers other things like movies and TV. I'll probably re-enjoy that as well. But yeah, as for Spurs, obviously back to business later this weekend. The players have been off Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They'll be back in tomorrow. Back into training. We'll start to get an idea of who's back in training, which will be great. We're hoping, obviously, Maddison and Solomon can be involved for some of these games ahead. And essentially said that he hoped to have them back for at least some of these 3 games that we've got in this little burst coming up. Press conference on Thursday, and then the big FA Cup match on Friday night, which, yes, City have got a dreadful record at the Spurs Stadium. No Sonny, though. Sonny is their, the chief tormentor, the guy that always gives them problems, and obviously he's not going to be there. So we'll have to see how Spurs play without him, but that would maybe be a major boost if they could get Maddison back. We'll see how that goes this week, and whether you would start him even if he wasn't quite ready yet. But just I think he's one of those players, a bit like Benzema, that would give you a huge lift. So yeah, we'll see how it all goes. Time to head off. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday and the rest of the week ahead. And I'll probably speak to you next weekend, either on the Saturday or the Sunday. And as always, stay healthy, stay safe, look after yourselves, and I'll catch you later. Goodbye.